Good morning. Welcome from my home. I'm Kurt. Let me turn this light on over here. There we go. That's a little more. It's kind of dark. Turn one more. It's 6:30 a.m. on a Sunday. And I think it's the 29th of March. And I'm going to do my book reading. This is my monthly event to read from my book, Going Alone. I do this pretty much every month. I missed the last couple of months because I was in a transition between jobs. I think things kind of settled down enough that I can get back into it. This is an annotated reading, which means that I'll be reading it and stopping to talk about it as I go. And I'm going to be reading from a new version of the book. Oh, hi, John. Welcome. Is this a new channel for you? This has a new cover. A lot has changed since I first wrote the book. I would be tempted to call this a second edition. But it's like my grandfather used to say, with his hammer, 5 new handles, 3 new heads, but it's been around forever. But it's the same book, but it's very different. It's completely changed. New chapters, new sections, lots of editing. But today, I'm going to read from Siberia Bridge. And the chapter Siberia Bridge is where I inserted Siberia Bridge after a friend of mine who read the book. She made 2 observations. The first, she observed that she asked if it would be nice if there would be a glossary in the book, because there's lots of characters within the book, like the ghosts of Siberia, the desert killers, the watcher, the miner, the deep water wilderness. And she kind of lost track of what these things like the concepts like the great indifference, and she kind of lost track of she wanted someplace where she could refer back to, like, if I talked about the great indifference again, a glossary you could turn to and find what is the great indifference. So I created a section, not a glossary, but a section called the cast, where I list out all of these casting characters and just define them and describe them. And I'm very pleased with that particular section, if I do say so myself. I really do think it helps. And I put that up front just after the introduction. And then I added another section sometime later, particularly, this is the one I'm going to read today, particularly for Siberia Bridge. Even though Siberia Bridge is described in the cast, Siberia Bridge deserves a chapter of its own, just because it's served. It's basically the centerpiece. It's the setting in which the whole book transpires. At least in terms of, not actually in terms of, that's not where I wrote everything, but it is the magnetic north in the book. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into it. So the path, Siberia Bridge, actually. Let me just find it. It's not a very long chapter. So here it is, Going Alone, Siberia Bridge. And I usually begin most of my chapters with first a little summary of what to expect from this chapter, then a literary quote that I think is relevant, and then dive right into it. Here we go. Siberia Bridge, where I wrote the story. We must go alone. I like the silence. Off to a great start. We must go alone. I like the silent church before the service begins better than any preaching. Ralph Waldo Emerson. So that quote is from Self-Reliance, of course, and I can just picture Emerson sitting alone in an empty church, reflecting on his thoughts amidst the Emerson was a preacher. I could picture him sitting there amidst all of the trappings of the church, all of the windows and the paintings and the icons, if there are icons, at least maybe the altar, sitting all alone in the hard pew, reflecting on the nature of God, and finding more of interest and of worth in those moments of introspection than listening to the service. We must go alone. And Siberia Bridge is my place where I went alone. Siberia Ghost Town in the East Mojave Desert is flanked on the north by the BNSF railroad line, which runs east and west through a great expanse of otherwise quite empty desert. On the other side of the ghost town, running parallel to the railroad, is Route 66, or the Mother Road, as it is sometimes called. Both corridors of traffic, rail and road, have existed here in various forms of improvement for more than 100 years. I first found Siberia Ghost Town after spotting from the road the lone standing stone wall which now serves as the center of the empty community which once was. I noted the wall while driving eastbound on Route 66, probably just as I was driving over the bridge which would later factor so significantly in the tale of the writing of this book. Now, I found Siberia after I found the volcano wilderness. So I returned to America. I had spent maybe a good year before I even went back to the desert, just like I'm doing right now with a new job, buckling under, working really hard, nose to the grindstone, thinking of nothing else but work, day and night. I had to get myself acclimated to my new life and my new position. And then slowly I began to make my way out to the desert, not really knowing where I was going to go or what I was looking for, other than I was trying to recreate a little bit of the experience that I'd had in my 20s and my 30s in the desert, which was kind of a lost wandering. Those years were really kind of a searching back then. Going out to the desert, searching for something, not knowing what it was. Corresponded that with, or counter that, or compare that to Japan, which was really more of an adventure. I really wasn't looking anything. I didn't think I could. It's probably because I didn't think I could find anything in Japan. But I was, hi Nathaniel. But in Japan, I was really just after the adventure. Back in America again, I was, it's the first time I really realized it. Now, it wasn't so much the adventure as much as the searching. About resuming with the search. Why is it that the desert was an area for searching, and Japan was an area for adventure? I also remember, if I go back far enough, that the desert was a place that scared the living crap out of me, and what caused me to turn tail and come back to the life that I made, which was a lucky thing, because I don't know that I'd have a very good haircut now if I had gone that other way, to say the least. So anyway, I remember coming out on my motorcycle. Actually, then I think I was driving around in my car, the red car that I gave, the Toyota that I bought. Is that right? Was it that far in? That means I had bought a car by then. That I was using that car for Lyft and DoorDash, that red car. And I remember I made the trip out to Route 66. And I was going slowly down Route 66, and I was looking for places, dirt roads that could take me off out into the desert, where I could park the car safely and then go for a hike. And I had found the volcano wilderness by just past Ludlow. I had found a road called Gasco Road, which is a dirt road. And I went to the end of that road and parked near the gas. There's a line that runs under the desert, and there's a station there where they can have access to that line. And I parked near there and then hiked off into the wilderness. And that's where that one photo came from that was figured so prominently in a lot of my stuff, 4 years ago maybe, which is that one awesome photo. I think it's awesome, at least, over the mountains, that dark black volcanic wilderness. That's what's over the top there. And then it was probably another 6 months later that I went further into the desert and found Route 60. I found Siberia Ghost Town. I certainly did, and that's what I was doing when I'm reading this part right here. I was riding my motorcycle, or riding my car. I say it's the motorcycle in here, but in fact it was the car. I deliberately made that change. It's a fib. It's a lie, because I wanted the consistency of the whole book to be, my companion is the motorcycle. So I didn't interject the car. So that's a lie. I certainly didn't notice the bridge when I passed over it that first day back in 2015. I was simply exploring the East Mojave by car. Well, I did say I guess I'm not such a liar after all. Moving slowly along Route 66, checking the road on either side for anything of interest for potential exploration. In fact, I wasn't looking for anything near the highway in particular, as I wasn't much interested in anything too close to the civilizing touch of either the highway or the railroad. and I was instead searching for good places where I could safely park my motorcycle. Oh, look at that. I caught myself. Like, see, isn't that what so how often happens when you fib? You catch yourself. So I gotta straighten this out. Am I gonna continue the truth, or am I gonna make a lie? Please, Mojave by car. I'm gonna go with a lie. I'm gonna change that car to motorcycle, because otherwise it has a consistency to the story. For the most part, everything in this book is absolutely rock solid true, exactly as I remember it, or I state it, with that one exception. So just keep it between us. It was actually a car, at least in the first 1 or 2 times I went to Siberia. See, that's what catches liars out, is the inconsistency. I was instead searching for good places where I could safely park my motorcycle some safe distance away from the road while I went for a long desert hike. So, when I saw the ruins of Siberia, I wasn't drawn to these for their own sake, but instead to the fact of a relatively well-maintained, short dirt road which left the highway leading to what appeared to be the ruins of a very old building. That'll do, I probably said as I flicked on the left turn signal and made my way carefully off the Route 66 asphalt and onto the dusty road. That sentence could be cleaned up a little bit. It doesn't, somehow, reading things aloud helps me to clean sentences up. That'll do, I probably said as I flicked on the left turn signal and made my way carefully off Route 66. I'm going to take out the asphalt because that's superfluous. I've got my little yellow highlighter. Whenever I read my own book, I mark it up and then I go back and change. I've been doing this for editing. I published this book in 2018. It's been 2 years of editing now. I'm going to take out the word the and asphalt. So it'll read, as I flicked on the left turn signal, that'll do, I probably said, as I flicked on the left turn signal and made my way carefully off Route 66 and onto the dusty road. That's better. The distance from the highway to the ruins is about the length of a football field, not far at all. And the dirt road is in pretty good shape, seemingly well-traveled and well-maintained. I would later learn that this was due to the ongoing attention of the railroad workers, trackmen, signalmen, linemen, railroad police, and others who make their living keeping this stretch of railroad in safe operational order. And there's a little superscript 5 right there. If you go back to let's follow it. Go back to the appendix. What are we going to learn from this? From this 5, I'm talking about the railroadmen. 5, bottom one. Oop, the dog wants out of the bedroom. Let's let Ollie out. Hey, you know how to get out by yourself. Come on, buddy. Come on. Come on. There's Ollie. So let's see what this superscript 5 says. You gonna get up on the couch? You gonna get up on the sofa? Come on, Ollie. Come on. Come and join me. Good boy, good boy. Whoops, oh goodness. Now I did it. Okay, let's let Rudy out too. Now the diaper dog wants out. Come on. Come on. Now that they're going to give me no peace now. I woke the hounds. What do they say about letting sleeping dogs lie? Okay, let's read this appendix piece. You want to come sit with me? Come here. Don't get all tangled up. 5. Henry David Thoreau also had a railroad and railroad workers to reflect on during his time in the woods. He uses their example and industry in providing commentary on our curious self-domestication. From the chapter of Walden, quoting Thoreau, "We do not ride on the railroad, it rides upon us. Did you ever think that those sleepers are there? Did you ever think what those sleepers are that underlie?" See, that's the thing about this 19th century writing. It combines words in tricky ways. I couldn't quite put those words together. You okay? Yeah, okay. Quoting Thoreau. But no, let me just add to this a little bit more. So Thoreau, living out in Walden, there was a railroad, and I've been there. I've been to Walden Pond. There's a railroad on I think it's the south side of the pond, which is really a giant lake. It's ginormous. It's a mile long. Their idea of East Coast idea of a pond is completely different. Well, I guess they've got the Great Lakes, so that puts everything into proportion. Anyway, on the east side, there's a railroad, and that railroad was there when Thoreau was there. I think it was the Fitch Railroad or something. And he would sometimes use that to walk along, especially, he wrote very beautifully about walking along it at night in the dark, back to Concord, Massachusetts, which was kind of a home base from his cabin out at the pond. So quoting Thoreau, "We do not ride on the railroad, it rides upon us. Did you ever think what those sleepers are that underlie the railroad? Each one is a man, an Irishman or a Yankee man. The rails are laid on them, and they are covered with sand, and the cars run smoothly over them. They are sound sleepers, I assure you, and every few years a new lot is laid down and run over, so that, if some have the pleasure of riding on a rail, others have the misfortune of being ridden upon. And when they run over a man that is walking in his sleep, a supernumerancy sleeper in the wrong position, and wake him up, they suddenly stop the cars and make a hue and cry about it, as if this were an exception. I am glad to know that it takes a gang of men for every 5 miles to keep the sleepers down and level in their beds, as it is. For this is a sign that they may someday get up again." There's Thoreau, always making his commentary about us, right, in our living. Imagine that. Isn't that true, though? I was just thinking that yesterday. How the great corporations are so much like the great houses, the great in the era of serfdom. And that's an old thought. We're serfs to the corporate elite. Anyway. The distance from the highway to the... I'm going to start that paragraph again. The distance from the highway to the ruins is about the length of a football field. Not far at all. And the dirt road is in pretty good shape, seemingly well-traveled and well-maintained. I would later learn that this was due to the ongoing attention of the railroad workers. Now, I was definitely thinking of Thoreau when I wrote that. Trackmen, signalmen, linemen, railroad police, and others who make their living keeping this stretch of railroad in safe operational order. I remember thinking about Thoreau and his railroad workers when I wrote that. I later come to know some of these men, swell guys, honest, hard-working men, people I respect, and I always strive to stay out of their way when I'm at Siberia, and never allow myself to become a nuisance to their hard, honest labor. In fact, I found labor here, too, of a sort. Though I'm never paid for my efforts, Siberia has become a quite effective work site and source of inspiration for me for both my writing and my videos, as well as my every effort of improved living. The ghost town, and in particular the bridge under the highway near the town, are where my desert muse does seem to live and reside. Live, despite the fact my muse is quite dead and non-existent, a figment of my imagination. Alive, in a sense, only as long as I live, and have the will and the way and the motive force to breathe life into something only my own musings might create. My muse did find me here in the desert, in the ghost town of Siberia. She did then also follow me far out into the desert, where she mostly shadowed my movements, nearly always silent, refusing to speak to me among the holy relics of the dead mountains and forgotten wastes of a landscape that never cared and never lived and never knew or loved or possessed any dear sentiment, thought, or capability which our species might attribute to life. My muse was my unloving, unfeeling, unthinking, and unliving imagined escort through a place through which I could never pass without her attentive ministrations and silent, whispered hints of something more to be found beyond my adventures and excursions, something to be found in the place I left behind, Wow, ain't that true? That's the first thing I talked earlier about, being scared, having the wits scared out of me and scared back to this life that was full 30 years prior to this. And that's definitely the case. And I'm glad that I heeded that. In a life I must love, should love ever. Let me start that one sentence again. It's a long sentence. I stopped midway. My muse was my unloving, unfeeling, unthinking, and unliving imagined escort through a place through which I could never pass without her attentive ministrations and silent whispered hints of something more to be found beyond my adventures and excursions, something to be found in the place I'd left behind. In a life I must love, should love ever be anything to dissuade the emptiness it was then too late to unsee or forget. The muse is my desert voice, a silent soliloquy and homage to what I can never truly know or share or escape from. My muse resides and originates from under that desert bridge. Yeah, right. So what part does the bridge at Siberia play in all this? Was there some poetry to be found beneath the girders and beams holding up the highway? Did the muse follow me from somewhere else in the desert or Japan to that place in the shade beneath the road? Does my muse live there still while I am away? Can the muse be found there after I am gone, or if someone ever came with me to the desert? Why the bridge? What role does that place play in this story? Shade and shelter are the answer, a refuge from the heat and fury of the desert summer. I came to the bridge out of necessity and then discovered a place of catalyst for what I might immodestly call my art. Now, I just took the dogs out for a walk, so I know they're okay. They both did their business. The first time I went to the bridge, I did so simply to get out of the sun and escape the heat. The heat, so impossibly intense there in the deep East Mojave during the summer. There's truly no rest from the blaze out there in the open desert. The sunlight out there can surely kill. So much energy piling on across whatever skin is exposed. A real threat, nothing to take lightly. So, on a very hot July day in 2016, I decided to pack some water and a few necessities and hike the quarter-mile to the nearer of the two bridges, which I could see supporting Route 66 to the east and west of Siberia, where flash flood arroyo crossed under the bridge, under the road. The first time I did this, I went to the bridge to the east of Siberia. It's a good bridge, and I found some interesting things below it, including a travel book written in Japanese, with a hand-penned note, again in Japanese, on the back. The note was written by a man who declared that he would not die away from his home. Try that again. The note was written by a man who declared that he would not die. Now, I can't do that. I wrote it, he would not die in quotation marks. It's not what he would write. But the note was written by a man who declared that I would not die away from home. It should be I would not die. It's amazing how many times I've read this and edited this, and I still find mistakes. He would not write that in the desert. He would not write, he would not die. He's referring to himself. I would not die. You know what all I have to need to do is just change the quotation mark. Start the quotation mark at would not die and take the he out. There you go. Then put the he in front of it. The note was written by a man who declared that he would not die away from home and that he would make it back alive. There you go. That's how we'll do it. I went back to that bridge again a few months later. The Japanese book was still there. The shade was good there. I'll try that again. I went back to the bridge again a few months later. The Japanese book was still there. The shade was good there. It was a fine place to rest and find shelter. The bridge served well the important purpose I was then after. Now, I happened to go back to that bridge in November, the first time I'd been back in years, and the Japanese book was gone. No idea what happened to it. I imagine it got blown away. Only a little bit left. 1, 2, 3 paragraphs left. It's a short chapter. It wasn't until a year later before I tried the other bridge, the bridge to the west. I decided to give that bridge a try when I realized the western bridge was closer to the Siberia ruins than the eastern bridge. The fact of being close was good, as it allowed me to better keep an eye on my motorcycle parked back at the ghost town ruins, which I periodically check on by popping my head out from under the bridge to make sure nobody is loading my bike onto a truck or setting a match to the gas tank to create a desert bonfire. I do worry about that. There is also something good about the space below the western bridge, though there's not much headroom down there. But there's also something more. It is a good spot. The sand is very soft and good for sitting. It's a good place to plop down and think. And that's how the writing got started. Just sitting on the soft sand below the bridge, with the sun roasting the desert beyond my shade, and the sound of periodic automobiles crossing fast overhead, and the frequent rumble and growl of mile-long freight trains moving by slowly a quarter mile to the north. This setting under the western Route 66 bridge became my place at Siberia Ghost Town. I'll try that again. This setting under the western Route 66 bridge became my place at Siberia Ghost Town. A sort of circumstance and atmosphere where I could cultivate and get to know better the muse I'd met earlier out there at the edge of the blank desert wilderness. That sentence is referring back to the volcano wilderness that I mentioned when I first started the video. A dead muse who seemed willing and able to follow me sometimes to the places where I go and where I'm willing and able to think. To think without much distraction I can't willingly ignore. To think where the conventions of my kind and my ways, to think without much distraction I can't willingly ignore. To think where the conventions of my kind and the ways of our collective consensus appear as weak sentiments easily put aside in favor of whatever else can be proven more sound and compelling. This is the bridge where I wrote much of the content found within Going Alone, especially the content under the heading Notes from My Muse. This is the bridge where I discovered the solution of developing a life of meaning in the face of a universe which seems so far devoid of inherent meaning or purpose beyond the mute scope of survival and the worthy act of passing our life from ourselves into those who will soon take our place. This is the home of my desert muse, and the place where I found the words of the story I do now choose to tell. I wonder if I should put a semicolon there. Anyway, that's the end of the chapter. So that's Siberia Bridge. Hello, morning, Camry. So that's Siberia Bridge, which is kind of a transitory chapter between the introduction, the cast, and then transitioning into the rest of the book. And it also serves as base camp for me in those excursions into the desert. Let's see if I missed any comments. John, Nathaniel. Hi, John. Hi, Nathaniel. I won't tell a soul. Jonathan won't. Good. Thank you. Your confidence is appreciated. Kurt, have you heard of Carl Jung? Sure, you bet. I haven't read his stuff, but I've heard of him. John, the muse you described is a perfect example of the anima archetype of Carl Jung's philosophy. Oh, really? I'll have to check that out. And then that's it. And my little dogs are back to sleep. Good morning, my friend. Hello, Aaron. Rudy's asleep in his diaper, and Ollie's there too. Well, that's it. One more chapter read. Oh, I got a light bulb out right there. Gotta fix that. I'll wish you all well. Thank you for dropping by. I hope you have a safe and happy day wherever you are. And we'll talk to you again sometime. Okay, bye-bye. Thanks for joining me, by the way.